So we're starting our series with an individual that was with me at the beginning of my journey. Chris Dunn was the talent director for Europe, Middle East, Africa for Marriott International. He was with Marriott for close to 17 years. Before that, he was with Whitbread, the company in the UK that managed close to 60 Marriott properties for another 9 years. And he did my first interview in Marriott in 2003, which I got accepted into the graduate program that him and his team created. He shares some incredible wisdom, learnings from mentors, and some very juicy interview tips. And he shares his journey at the age of 55 becoming an entrepreneur and purchasing a franchise of home care in one of the parts of Scotland. And golden nuggets on how he keeps his energy so high, living a life of passion and inspiration.
Welcome to the Business Mentor Podcast.
Good to see you, my friend.
You too, George. It's a privilege to be doing this with you, and I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted. I've followed your career unbeknownst to you. I don't know if you call it stalking, but I've been following you on social media for the last, I guess, 25 years, whatever it is. So I'm so pleased that we're connecting like this. It's great.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. How we met, I remember that rainy December evening 2002. I was studying at the University of Plymouth, and you came and with passion and fire, you presented the graduate program. And I say to people that changed the trajectory of my life because, one person, you're one handshake away from meeting someone that takes you on a different course. So before we get deeper into that, tell me a bit about who is Chris Dunn and a bit about your background.
Who's Chris Dunn? That would make my family laugh, that question. So, who am I? So, yeah, my name is Chris Dunn. My wife would like it if people call me Christopher. She thinks that's posher, but nobody does. So, I was born and raised in Glasgow, in the west coast of Scotland, and I'm one of 8 kids, a loving mum and dad, 7 boys and a girl, and Siobhan, the girl's the youngest. Brilliant childhood in Glasgow, very happy childhood. After school, went to Napier. It's Napier University now. It was Napier College at the time. I always tell people I went to University in Edinburgh, but it was Napier College in Edinburgh, and then an SHND in business. Then various bits and bobs, but I joined the Guinness Graduate Program in the late 80s and really worked in beer sales, George, for about the first 10 years of my career.
Wow.
Transitioned over then to human resources at the back end of my time with Whitbread. I'd been with Guinness, I'd been with a company called Labatt's, a Canadian beer company, and then into Whitbread. We might talk about it then at Whitbread. There's the Whitbread Hotel Company where there's Marriott hotels, and then they transitioned to Marriott, which we'll maybe get into. And then the last sort of 15 years of my career, and it was in HR with Marriott before doing my own thing. I've got a beautiful wife, Neve, and 4 beautiful children, Quiva, Bavin, Fiacra, I need to remember his name, and Ashin. And and we live in kids are all different places, but we live in the south side of Glasgow, and I now have my own care business based in Clydebank, just in the west side of Glasgow. So that's a kind of whistle stop of who I am and what I'm about.
Before we really get into, so Whitbread owned Marriott in the UK. I don't know if they still own them at the moment.
No, George. So Whitbread, for those who might not know, are a massive kind of pub leisure company, beer company. I'm not sure all the beer brands now. In fact, they do beer brands now, but essentially are brands like Beefeater Restaurants, Brewers Fayre, Costa, Premier Inn, David Lloyd Leisure. They were all brands within the Whitbread estate. And one of those brands was they had the franchise for, I think it was about, honestly, 45 Marriott hotels. So Marriott branded hotels, but ran by under the franchise agreement by Whitbread. And we did that for probably from I don't know, the early mid-70s or maybe earlier than that. But in 2005, then that was acquisitioned back to be managed by Marriott. So that franchise was then sold back to Marriott, and those hotels became managed Marriott properties. And then I moved with that. That move, I think a couple of years after I'd met you.
So how did you end up going from beer to human resources and hotels? Tell me about that transition.
Yeah, no, that was great. So, the early part of my career was with Guinness, and then with Labatt's, and then with Whitbread beer sales. Brands like Murphy's, Heineken were all in that kind of portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing a bunch of sales jobs, and it was a friend of my brother, a guy called Pat McKeown, who's sadly no longer with us. And Pat was the HR director for Beefeater Restaurants, and then he became a very senior whitbread executive at a very young age, very talented guy. I went to Pat and said, "Listen, Pat, I think I'm in beer sales, but I think I could be good in HR. And could you help me make that transition? Because really, I saw HR as sales. I mean, you are selling,
Yeah.
if it's recruitment, you're selling, you are persuading and influencing people all the time. And I just thought that might be a skill for me. And with a big company like Whitbread, there's always opportunity. So Pat helped me sort of transition into kind of a human resources role within the Beefeater restaurant brand in the UK, which is a huge brand, still going, maybe not as big as it was in the 90s, but a state restaurant brand, and then from there various other roles within Whitbread and human resources, which I loved. And of course, then the pinnacle of the Whitbread portfolio was Marriott. And how do you possibly find a role in there? So that was always my goal, to try and eke that out. So yeah, it was just through knowing people. I'm a big fan of that, George. If somebody can help you get a leg up, and I try and do it for others, but don't be scared to ask for help and advice and counsel. And Pat did that for me, and I'll always appreciate him for that. That's how I got into the world of HR.
And then with Marriott, so once you started with them, what role was that with?
So it was a funny one, actually, George. How I got to Marriott was by fluke, absolute fluke, because it was very difficult to get into Marriott, because it really was seen as the gold star of the whip. But certainly for HR, it was very difficult to get into. The reason I got in was it was a rainy day in, I guess, 2001, maybe 2000. Late 2000, I parked my car in one of the Whitbread directors' car park spots, which in those days they all had these spots, and it was a big deal. And anyway, that really annoyed that director. Like, it really irritated her, and I was summoned to her office and scolded for parking. And it was raining, and she wasn't there. And I just thought, well, I'll sneak in. And that night, as I was driving home, we lived in Bedford at the time, I thought, I can't work here. I got to get out of this. And I called up pal of mine at Marriott and David Goodson. I said, look, David, would there be any HR jobs in Marriott? And the following day, he called me back and said, look, there is an opening, and you might be the man. That was how I mean, it was that. I mean, it was, and the lesson there is, park your car in somebody else's spot, and who knows what may happen. So then I joined Marriott as talent manager, which was a brilliant job. It was I'm kind of a recruitment guy. I'm the recruitment guy for putting together a graduate program, but I'm also the recruitment guy for exec chefs and for general managers and for head office people, and for finding a chauffeur for Alan Parker, who was the chief executive of the Whitbread Hotel Company, and everything. So I was really across the board, and it was just so exciting. And there were all these fantastic hotels in the UK, and I got to go to them and meet really interesting, eclectic people. And it was a pivotal moment in my career, joining Marriott, or being a part of the Marriott brand. And then the big part of that was the creation of a graduate program. That was really that was one of the kind of key tasks that I had to bring in when I joined. So that was really it, and it was just we just went for it. So it was a very happy time. My family were very young. The kids had just first two daughters had been born. We were living in Bedford, North London, and it was just a very exciting time in our careers and our lives.
You were pivotal in creating the graduate program, correct?
Yeah, so that was it. It was, I mean, I was sort of really brought in as a kind of key thing. We need to have a graduate program. There have been some sort of management kind of students that have been brought in, but nothing formalized really. And I was kind of given a free rein. Go wherever you need to go. I brought a wee team with me. A lady called Katie Chilton, who's having a fantastic career. And we kind of, between me and Katie, we just kind of made it happen, and it was just really a very and so we would go to Oxford Brookes, and we would come down to you in the south coast, and we went over to Shannon College in Ireland, and Sheffield Hallam, and up to Strathclyde, and it was a real roadshow of trying to find the very best hospitality talent. And at first, that program evolved, George, into what's now called Voyage, and we brought the Voyage. I mean, that was our kind of baby, but it didn't start as Voyage. It started as just like Marriott Graduate Development Program, and we kind of learned as we went.
And that became, I believe, the best hospitality graduate program in the UK, correct?
Well, that's what I said. So yeah, it became a very prestigious program to be a part of. And I'll tell you, and the folks at my bosses at Whitbread at the time, I take great credit for that, because they really just said to me, go and make it happen. Do whatever you need. The general managers will support you. The general managers will come and do interviews with you, come and do presentations with you. There's a decent budget to get this thing off the ground, but go get the best people. Do not only focus on world class talent. And so we had thousands of applications, and
Right.
it was it was unbelievable, actually. There was a point where, and of course, in those days, George, they're paper applications. It's not, the technology wasn't in place, so you were literally sifting through,
Yeah.
and you were telephone interviewing literally thousands of people, and then you bring it down to hundreds doing interviews, and then coming down to I don't know where you came to. Where did we do your assessment centre? Do you remember?
Yes,
Glasgow.
assessment center. So the first interview was with you, I believe, in Luton at the
Yeah,
headquarters. And the second interview was at Marriott Maidavale, where I ended up working years later on as well. And I remember it was an 8-hour assessment center. There
yeah, yeah,
was, general managers and regional directors and HR managers, and here's 20 minutes, prepare a 5-minute stand-up presentation, speak in front of everybody.
yeah, yeah,
Here's
yeah.
all the statistics. You're the bar manager, you're the reception, you're the housekeeping manager, you're the restaurant manager. You've got 45 minutes to, prepare for the directors board meeting.
That's right.
There was people that cracked, Chris. I mean, it was
No,
amazing.
no, it was no. That's funny. I'd forgotten some of that, actually, George. You're right. I mean, some of the scenarios we put you guys in, and I would say at the beginning of each assessment centre, and everyone would be looking out, and they're all young people. They're all, graduates in their early 20s, and this is a big deal, And I'd say, listen, you want to feel the fear and do it anyway. You want to be here, and it's gonna be an awkward kind of day. At the end of the day, you're gonna love it, but you've just got to embrace this what's going to happen next. And those that, yeah, there were some people just didn't fancy it, and there were
Yeah.
those that kind of embraced it and shone. And what we would do at the end of that day, George, so when you guys all left, I loved it. I would sort of have all of the assessors around the table, and we'd go through everybody individually and talk about them and talk about their day. And it was interesting because even there were some people that didn't maybe perform particularly well, but
Mhm.
you just knew they're an X factor. There were some people that performed brilliantly, but you could feel their arrogance, or you just, it was so interesting. And what's interesting about those groups of graduates is I followed most of them through their careers, as I have you, whether it's in LinkedIn or socials. And so many of those groups of graduates have had just fabulous careers. Not all with Marriott, of course, people going
Yeah.
through other things. But yeah, it's been a kind of joy to, and it's made me dead proud. And I'll send these notes to folks from all over the world, how proud I am when I see some of their successes, like you, and go out and go for it and make a difference and serve others. And when you mention that, it brings back a very, very happy time of my career and my life, actually. Yeah,
Well, I could tell you was happy because when you presented the graduate program, Chris, when you came to Newton Abbot, and I think you trained it from London, and
that's right.
I've told you in
How would you remember?
person.
That's right. I did train it from
Yeah.
London. That's right. Yeah.
And I think you're an hour and a half late as well. I think there was a massive delay with the trains as well. We
Well, I
sat
wouldn't
there with
know. I don't know if you
patients,
want to
and
mention that necessarily, but yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was negotiating in my head to just go to the pub, to the uni pub, but thank God I ended up staying. So you really presented it with passion, with fire, with belief. How do you live like that? How do you stay in that mode, passionate about what you do? How do you keep your energy levels so high? Because every time I saw you and presenting, you moved people. You moved them,
Right.
and you're able to communicate a vision very clearly, which is one of the big traits of a leader, and the vision and what's possible for them. So tell me a bit about that skill before I delve a bit deeper into how you created such an amazing program and found the talent, because I followed a lot of the careers as well. But first, touch on you.
I think, well, first of all, thank you. That's a lovely thing to say. It's a lovely thing to hear, and it really is genuinely. It's a humbling thing to hear, and so thank you for that. I think that it comes. Um, For me, it comes from my family. It comes from my mum and dad, and I'm being brought up in a loving family of love and laughter. I around me with my brothers and my sister, first of all, and my dad would be funny with all of us, and certainly with me. He'd sort of say, "Listen, Chris, you will never be the smartest guy in any room. You know, never." But you can always be the most enthusiastic. You know, you can always be the most enthusiastic. And there's something about enthusiasm that is infectious and it's authentic. And and I think and I think about the wonderful people I've met in my life, and those that I love the most and those that I cherish are those are folks that are both interested and interesting, and are genuinely curious to know how you're doing and what you're doing, and like so they're interested in others, and then by that very nature they kind of tend to be more interesting people. Yeah. But I think it's about being optimistic. It's about being curious. It's about always want to come out of your kind of comfort zone and seeing the best in others. I think that's a thing, and but sometimes you can be a sucker. So, I mean, I genuinely do think I'm always looking for the best in other people, and that's sometimes that can bite you, but generally, but almost always it won't. Yeah. So I think that and that's always just been my glass being half full, really. And I think also you and I have and maybe we'll talk about him a while. I think as a friend, Marcus Child, who we connected with at Marriott. And he had this thing where genuinely he would begin every day with a kind of an attitude of gratitude. Genuinely, I'm just can't believe I'm alive. This is just. My dad would say it. My dad, who's no longer with us, would open his eyes in the morning and he would see the sky and just say, "This is absolutely brilliant. I'm still here." And just grateful, and even in the crap days, just be grateful to be here, and to people around you, and to be able to live. So that's always been my kind of attitude to life, really. I don't. It's not deliberate. It's not. It's just how I am. So it can drive me mad. It can drive my wife mad at times. But yeah. But yeah.
So you said something about, I mean, it was obvious, Chris, that Marriott, your graduate program, was incredible at finding world class. I remember in my year we applied. You came at the end of 2001, it's probably December, no, at the end of 2002. I started in September 2003 at Marriott St. Pierre. And there was 2,000 applicants, and in the end, there was 50 graduates for that year.
Yeah.
How do you separate the world class? What is
Yeah.
something that you can help? Because a lot of people don't have the interview skills, so maybe touch on interview-wise, and then how do you sift through so many people to really find who's got the potential?
Well, good question. Good question. How do you do it? I mean, well, first of all, you're right. There were literally thousands of applications, and so one of the things I was always looking for in a CV, still do, or maybe less so much now in my business, and maybe we'll come on to that. But certainly for the graduates, I loved seeing a student that worked, and maybe not even in pulling pints. It could have been anything, but there's something about putting in a bit of a shift, and if it is making beds or pulling pints or serving guests or anything, doing anything to kind of get your hands dirty and to have some reality to work. And so I would look to see that within a CV. That would be the first thing. And I would be a sucker for I would be a sucker for the hotel schools. If you've gone to a hotel school, you've worked within hospitality while you're there, you've got my curiosity. So that might help you get through then to some sort of sifting of an interview. And we would do telephone interviews first of all. So you kind of get, and in a telephone interview, George, remember, but communication is not just what you say, but it's your body language, which maybe you can't see a telephone, but you certainly can tell tone of voice, and it goes back to you can really get a sense of somebody by by how they would conduct themselves, even that kind of early stage. And then so from there, we didn't at that point. It wasn't. I mean, Marriott now have a very robust interview program, or our style around a thing called STAR. Situation, task, action, results. So you're asking people to share the big picture of a scenario. What was the specific task? What action did they take? And what was the result? Sometimes good or bad. And that's how you would have it now. Then it was a bit broader in the sort of questions that you're asking. But one of the things, and if there's any students that are watching this, that I always thought were powerful in 2001 and powerful in 2024, 2025. When you go for an interview, to be prepared. And by being prepared doesn't mean Googling the hotel or the business that you're about to go in a interview with, but genuinely be prepared. So in the hotel business, um, had you visited a Marriott hotel? Have you had a drink at the bar? Have you asked the leisure club, associate to maybe show you around? Have you said to him, listen, I'm coming for an interview here next Thursday. Is there anything, I loved all that. I loved the thought that somebody would actually go above and beyond, because people don't.
Right.
People will Google your company and they'll just come and be prepared that way. But when you make that extra effort, and when I saw some of the graduate interviewees just go above and beyond. I mean, there's a guy, Bert, I don't know who Bert, I think maybe Bert was after you. Bert is now the director of, I think, Glion Hotel School. Brilliant fellow from Maastricht. I think he went to Maastricht. And hotel school, and he flew over to London to spend a weekend in a Marriott hotel. I mean, that was what he did. And then went back home and came back for the interview. And so
Wow.
when I said, Bert, tell me about Marriott, he said, well, I will tell you about Marriott. I was at the Maida Vale Marriott for this. I then went to the Regent's Park. I then went to Kensington. I spoke to somebody at County Hall. I then went to the Grosvenor. And I thought, oh, this kid's not messing about. I mean, this is... So he's got me. He's absolutely got me, because nobody else is doing that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. I hope my daughter won't mind me saying this. My daughter, Baby, applied to work for Heineken about 6 months ago. She just graduated and she didn't get the job and she was gutted. And it was a big job at Heineken. Heineken's head office, global UK head office is in Edinburgh. She didn't get the job. And she was very upset. It was a Friday night. But the last thing she did on Friday before she went to bed was she wrote a thank you letter or thank you email to everybody that interviewed her and said, look, I want to say I'm so sorry I didn't get this job. I really loved the opportunity to meet you all. You're clearly a brilliant culture. If there was ever an opportunity in the future, please think of me, but have a fantastic weekend. And again, thanks for the opportunity.
Nice.
Now, now she was the only person that did that. She was the only she was the only person that did that. And 2 months later, Heineken called her and said, "Listen, hey, baby, could you mind coming back in to see us again?" And now she's now 3 or 4 months into the job, and I just happen to know that letter, that bit of class, that above and beyond, and it could be anything, George. That subtlety, could be anything. And I use that example, but it's because she's a great kid. But yeah, it's just that X factor, George, and it's hard to describe it sometimes. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100% sense. I think, you made some great points. It's researching the company before you go in, have some questions ready about the company, have some questions ready about the role, and even the follow-up letter. I think that's absolutely magic. It's few people do it. I own a restaurant at the moment. I've done many roles in the past. I get a lot of CVs. Few people even write a letter. So many people just send an email and their CV attached. So if you're too lazy to even just write a few lines.
Marriott, there's a bunch of parts of Marriott culture that I try now and include in my business that I have now. But one of the things which I love is be brilliant at basic things. George, see if you're brilliant at the basics, you're going to be brilliant. I mean, I'm talking about the basics. A note to say thank you. I mean, it's a basic, but it's a simple basic. It takes 10 minutes, 5 minutes, but it's nobody else does it. I mean, and if you're brilliant at the basics, you're going to be brilliant. No, and in my company now, we're a care at home company, and we look after people in their homes, so they don't have to go into a care home. We're called home instead. A basic is turn up on time, take your time with your client, stay the full time, be engaged. I mean, that's just a basic. And if you do those basics, you will have a brilliant business. And it's a real Marriott culture. A comfortable bed, a cold pint of Stella. So the clock above the reception works. The associates look the part. I mean, these are all basics. You just put them all together. I mean, I could go on, but yeah, that's it's the little touches.
Fantastic. Before I go into about your business and how you made that decision to transition there, tell me a bit about the biggest hotel merger in history. When Marriott International, I think at one point was the third biggest hotel group in the world. I don't know if Starwood was the second or the fourth. They merged together in 2016 and became the biggest. I can't think of a better company, because I was talking about Marriott and the ethos, and maybe touch on that, how they put their associates first, their employees.
Yeah, that was. I mean, that's the yes. The Starwood acquisition was absolutely massive. It was massive, and it was a real lesson for me at the time on, on organization, on communication, empathy, on respect, because and I'm just I mean, I'm at that point, I'm an HR director getting on with my work. But when one company takes over another company and the impact that has on the employees of, in this case, Starwood, and how and how they are cared for through that, it was really it spoke to what a class organization Marriott was, and I'll tell you, some of the best people in Marriott now in 2024, and I'm sure that people would say this, are the Starwood talent that kind of came in and brought their culture and immersed it into the Marriott culture and then embraced the Marriott culture, because it's not easy. You're bringing all these brands together, but much more importantly, you're bringing people together, and that, globally, you know. I mean, Marriott's culture of, if you look after your associates will look after your guests, and then the guests, and by that you'll look after the business, and then you merge that with another company and bring that together. It's not, the Starwood culture. I couldn't articulate it in the same way at the time, but they got on board, and then they brought with them these brilliant brands
Yeah.
that really, that just enhance so beautifully the Marriott portfolio. But the complexity of it, the technology behind it, because you've got different systems, different processes, different brands, different culture. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to guess 80, 90 different countries.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's unbelievable, really. And there was a guy called Arnie Sorensen, who was the CEO, a beautiful, brilliant man who led that. And I don't know if you know much about Arnie, George, and if you don't, you should read up on him. And folks listening to this, if you ever get a chance to kind of, and there's plenty of articles written by Arnie and about Arnie, and he led the companies through that with just great class and dignity, and my involvement was interesting, because we had at that point I was working for the call center part of the business, what we call CEC, and there were call centers, there were Marriott call centers, there were Starwood call centers all over the world, and bringing those together was just interesting. Again, with the technology involved and the people involved and the cultures involved, it was a really, really exciting thing to experience,
Yeah.
and it's proved to be an unbelievable success. If you just look to the Marriott share price, it continues to be so strong. It's just such a, it's such a brilliant company. I'm so proud to have been a part of it.
Look, I mean, it's something massive, and there's so many moving parts. It's probably also challenging to put in a few words, because I can't even comprehend. Well, multiple headquarters, managers, directors, technology, HR, finance. It's
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And great people. And it's funny. You can imagine how awkward it is. And the challenge, of course, is there were lots of times where there are only so many jobs, and so not everybody found the home they might not want to find. And that's an interesting lesson, how you handle that and manage that with grace and class and empathy, because everyone didn't land where they wanted to. Some people went on and had wonderful careers outside Marriott. Some people thrived in Marriott. Maybe they didn't get a job, but they went on to do other things in the company. But it's the people part of it that I think is most interesting. I mean, others would maybe think technology and processes, but
Yeah.
we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. It's really interesting.
So then, if we transition a bit now to your own business, what inspired you to say, you know what, after all these years, I'm going
Yeah.
to open my own business? And Tell me about the beginning of that.
I was very, very happy at Marriott. I intended to be at Marriott forever. We'd gone to America in 2014 to Omaha, Nebraska, where I was involved with our Omaha call center, which was about, I don't know, 1.5, 2,000 people, and a really sort of exciting adventure. And then from there, we'd gone to California, to Santa Clara, and then into San Francisco to do various HR jobs. I absolutely loved it. And 19, just through some family, personal things, my wife and kids had to come home for a few months, just some family dynamics that we had to care for back in Glasgow. And so I was doing some long distance commuting, really for a period of time where I would work for 4 or 5 weeks in San Fran. Don't say San Fran, Chris. People from San Francisco hate it when you say San Fran. So I worked in San Francisco like for 4 weeks and then come home for 10 days and back out
Yeah.
and backwards and forwards. And it was tough going actually. And it'd been tough going for the family for years because my jobs had always been jobs where I'd be away from home and I could be away for weeks at a time in various places.
Yeah.
And so that was the nature of my role for a long period of time. But anyway, even the kids had to come home, and I was backwards and forwards. And then when the pandemic happened, I then went home and was at home, worked from home for a while, but I was back in Glasgow with Neve
Mhm.
and the kids. It became clear to me as 2020 was moving on that actually it was time to come home. And it was time to be back in Scotland. My dad was not getting any younger. It was wonderful to be surrounded by family. My kids were loving being in Scotland and we'd loved America. Maybe this might be the time, Chris. This might be the time that I have to transition. I bumped into an old school friend of mine, a chap called Paul Armstrong, in Marks and Spencer's in Glasgow. This is around about September 2020. And I said, how you doing? We chat and a hug and hello. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I said, I've got a homestead franchise. I said, well, what? I didn't know what that was. He said, well, we look after people in their homes. So they don't have to go into a care home. And I thought, I came home and I said to Neve, I met this old school pal of mine and he's got this business and this might be time. I was going back to America to marry it. That was the plan. And that's what I did, in fact. But this might be time. And so as we get later into 2020 and in 21, I started to talk to people from Homestead and just scope it out. Could this be something I could do? And I've been thinking about, I was thinking, I was thinking about a McDonald's franchise. I was thinking about lots of things. If I were to come home, what would I do?
Mhm.
And then I went back to America. And I actually went back to America, George, in 2021 for 9 months by myself. Because remember, the pandemic, you couldn't go backwards and forwards. So
Mhm.
that kind of cemented for me, look, it's time. And I know I don't look it, but I was turning 55. And to that point, there was some things with pensions and stuff, and I could retire, a Marriott perspective. So I thought, you know what, maybe this is time, get to 55, and maybe this is time. The beauty of Homestead as an option for me coming back to Scotland was, first of all, it's people. It's about people. You probably don't know this, George. One of my children, Fiacra, is non-verbal autistic.
All
So
right.
so he's a beautiful, beautiful boy. He's now 18. Brilliant, brilliant fellow, the core of our family. But we have cared for Fiacra. He's got additional learning needs and he's on the spectrum. So we've cared for Fee all of his life and we will care for him all of his life. He requires 24/7 care, essentially. So we know the world of care. I mean, we live in the world of care as a family. And we know what brilliant care looks like. We also know what not brilliant care looks like. And we know the impact that can have on everybody from the child themselves, perhaps, or the adult and their families. So we just felt, for Neve and I, my wife Neve and I, we felt as a family, this would be a wonderful fit for us to be
Mhm.
in care and to be of service to others. I mean, listen, let's make no mistake about it. We want to create a world-class, profitable business. Absolutely, we want to have that, but we're not flipping cheeseburgers, and
Yeah.
we're not doing that. We want to do it in a space where it's about people, and it's about how can we enhance the lives of others, and at the same time, yeah, have a wonderful, successful, thriving business. And for me, George, a franchise was a good option because I'm not a strong. People who know me will know this. Processes, systems, finance, they aren't my strengths. And so opening my own business unstructured could be mayhem. But being a part of a world class franchise, and Homestead is the largest care home business in the world. There's
Right.
thousands and you wouldn't know. The thing about home instead is that often it's a crisis purchase. So often people don't know they need you until they need you. until mum or dad would fall down the stairs, something would happen. So it's not a business you may know a lot about until you're in the world of needing care or your family needing care. So yeah, so that was a structured franchise model in a brilliant company with very similar values to Marriott. Struck a chord with me, and so yeah, so I came home. I retired from Marriott in October 2021, and we started the business, and we went for it, and so that's the last 3 years. So we've been open now. Our business has been going just 3 and a bit years. So yeah, and we're looking after people in their homes. That's what we do.
Fantastic. So tell me a bit about what's one of the biggest challenges you faced when opening that, and how did you overcome that?
Great question. Geez, George, I never imagined I would be a kind of an entrepreneur. I never imagined I would ever leave Marriott. And when you've been in that, and you know this, when you've been in that cozy corporate world, guaranteed salary, surrounded by brilliant, talented people, and comforted in that kind of way, and even if you've got a bad day, you're still getting paid, and with that, for me, I had the great privilege of travel as part of my job, and so I just got to, I got to travel around the world many times doing my work. You leave that, and then you've got your office with no furniture and a computer by yourself, and a dream. Literally, it's frightening and really scary, especially if you do it and it's not like I'm in the hotel business now. I'm in the care business, of which I know nothing about. And it still is kind of scary. It is scary. But it's invigorating. So it was me. I had a care manager with a desk and a computer, and some leaflets and a model to follow, and off we go to recruit carers, to try and find clients, and to match those carers to clients, and to create something essentially from nothing. It doesn't just happen by magic. You've got to get off your backside and do it. To answer your question, I found it nerve-wracking, and I found it also invigorating. And it's funny, I met a pal of mine who's a guy called Michael Smith. And Mike was a couple of years younger than me at St. Aloysius at school. And Mike is a very successful Glasgow businessman. A brilliant Orb is a brilliant branding marketing company, and I went to see him about a month into starting the business, because literally, George, I was driving around, dropping off leaflets, knocking on doors. Hello, my name's Chris Dunn. Going to lawyers and going to funeral directors and the butchers and hello, you literally are knocking on a door. And when you sell care, you're not selling. I'm not selling a can of iron brew. I'm selling. You're not really. You're putting yourself forward. Say, look, if we can ever help. And I was feeling awkward about it, and I was sitting in my car, and I thought, I don't know what I'm supposed to do as an entrepreneur starting a business, and the phone's not rung at all.
Yeah.
And what have I made this terrible mistake? And there's many times, if Tiff Schaefer sees this, my old Marriott boss in California, there's many times I was thinking, I'm just gonna call Tiff up and say, Tiff, I made a terrible mistake. Please, can I come back to Marriott? But Mike said to me, great advice, which I would pass on. If you're not sure what to do, just do something. Just get out. Yeah, leaflet drop, knock on doors. I'll tell you, George, after we finish today, I am going with one of our carers to a thing called a chatty cafe, which is a church hall where generally older people can go and meet, have a free meal, be fish and chips today, it's Friday, have a sing song, have a chat, because they may live by themselves, and we do that just to get involved, just to be with other people, and just to see how we can help. It's just doing something rather than doing nothing. If you do nothing, you're gonna miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So Mike said, Chris, just do something, just get out of bed, because there's times, again, when you start a new business and the phone doesn't ring and you've no money coming in and you've spent hundreds of thousands of pounds or whatever, you're thinking, the heart goes, and you think your heart's thumping. But that was great advice for me. Get out of bed and knock on doors and be enthusiastic, and yeah, be willing to learn, be willing to bring a team with you, and be humble, because again, that's an interesting part of this, George. For me, it was, and maybe I'm opening up a wee bit too much here, but when when you've lived the Marriott life of, at times in my career, getting on a plane, turning left, having a glass of champagne, getting picked up in Mumbai airport and getting taken to a marble palace of a hotel where the general manager meets you, and you're a very important person. And then and then a few years later, you're walking down, Helensburgh High Street, knocking on butchers' doors and handing out your business card. Hello, I'm Chris Dunn. It's a deep breath that you take, and it's a humble breath that you take to say, right, we're pivoted here and we are going again. It's also kind of an interesting thing about being 55 and doing it, because I'm a great believer that 55 is the new 35 kind of thing. So you reinvent yourself. I intend to do this for many, many years. My brother Liam has just turned 66. He's a great inspiration for me, as is all my family. My brother Johnny's, I think, also 50, no, 60. They're both in their mid 60s, and they're both absolutely living in the world, working, being of service to others. And there's no intention of giving that up. And so I'm 58. So why wouldn't I be doing this for the next 10 years, solidly and with enthusiasm and sorry, I'm blathering on. I don't even remember the question, but yeah, it was nerve wracking to do your own thing. The guy called Martin Jones, who's the chief executive of Home Instead in the UK, and when he interviewed me originally about me joining Home Instead and having, so I've got an area, I've got a part of Scotland, Western Bartonshire, Argyll Bute, they're areas of Scotland. And what we do is we look after people in their homes, we look after people who maybe live with dementia, we'll help them with companionship, we'll help them with maybe personal care, hands-on care, help them get dressed and have a wash and take them out to the shops and just help them in whatever they need. So we do whatever it takes. We look after people 24/7. We look after people for an hour every 2 weeks and everything in between, and whatever we can do to help our clients and their families.
Yeah.
And Martin said to me, he said, Chris, if you were to do this job and take on this and buy this franchise, this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. This will be the hardest thing you've ever done, and it'll be the best thing you've ever done. And and he's absolutely right. It's absolutely the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
But in the very best way, it's the best thing I've ever done. I mean, we've impacted the lives of hundreds of families and positively, and we're meeting people every day to see how we can help them and their families. And it's a beautiful business to be in, not an easy business to be in. You've got to find great talent. You've got to, and that's finding great carers is harder than finding clients. Finding your team, recruiting wonderful people. Because it's not, recruiting a carer is unlike anything else you could ever do. It's not like recruiting a chef or recruiting a revenue manager or a general manager. I've never experienced anything like it, because what makes a great carer, though some of those questions I was telling you about, the interview questions, it doesn't wash the same way.
Yeah.
When you're trying to find somebody that can go into someone's house and build that trust and that empathy and that, it's just a whole different world. We're looking after people at such a special time of their lives, to often towards the end of their life, and what a privilege is that is. And unfortunately, a part of that is that our clients will pass away, and that's a part of nature of business. But we are there through that last part of the journey of life, and it's unbelievable. I mean, it is just the conversations you have, the stories that they tell you, their families tell you about them, about their clients. It's very special. And every night I'll come home and my wife, Neve, will have a glass of sparkling and we'll celebrate life of the day. And I'll say, darling, I couldn't even begin to explain to you what my day's been like. It's just the people I've met, the conversations I've had, the things we've done, are just are such a privilege. A tough privilege at times, but a privilege. Yeah.
What a blessing. Awesome. So, a couple more questions. I think we're wrapped up. There's some really juicy stuff there. What's a person that inspired you, Chris, and how have they impacted your life? Is there one or two people that you're like, okay, that stand
What?
out?
Well, I mentioned one. It wasn't a man that I knew very well, but Arnie Sorensen was a beautiful, brilliant man who led Marriott brilliantly. I'm saying brilliant twice. And he made a huge impact in lots of ways, some very personal I wouldn't even get into but today just because it would take too long. But anybody from Marriott watching this who've ever met Arnie would attest to that. So that would be a professional at the highest level, a professional impact. My godfather My godfather, George, was a guy called Brian Sweeney, Uncle Brian. Brian Sweeney, when he was 5 years old, contracted polio and lost the use of his legs.
Oh, wow.
There's a wonderful picture of him and his brother Kevin playing football when he was about 3.5, 4. You know, this active young boy. Anyway, he got polio, and so he was in a wheelchair for all of his life. Brian was a jockey. He was a publican. He was a bookie. He was the best piano player you could ever imagine hearing. He was my godfather. He was a guy. He was a guy, George, that was always interesting and always interesting to listen to and always interested. And he made a massive, and I couldn't, and I was always so proud. Like I've got 7 siblings, and they all knew that Brian was kind of the best godfather. He was always good for a couple of, it was always good for a crisp £5 note, and he was just a beautiful man, and he loved to drive fast cars. You know, he drove a Porsche, and he was the coolest guy. He would travel around the world. So he had the largest. I mean, he had an enormous impact in my life. My uncle Brian. Yeah, and so thank you for asking me that question, because in asking it, it's allowed me to think about Brian. I'm sure we all have somebody in our life that's just a wee bit special and different. I mean, from anybody else, and uniquely different. And so thank you for asking me about that. So I would say professionally, not that I would have ever known Arnie well, would be the leader of Marriott, and personally my uncle Brian. And by the way, George, sorry, congratulations to you for doing this. This is you'd said this that you were going to do this and put yourself out there and pivot as part of your professional experiences. And by the way, I think you're going to be fantastic at this. I think that you'll be natural at it, as you are clearly. But well done, you. You said you were going to do something and you've gone and done it. And so congratulations to you for making
Thank
this
you,
work.
Chris. I really appreciate that. I mean, I always, you know me, I love people. You actually picked me working in food and beverage in hotels, and you put me in a sales role. And at that time, I was like, I don't know how to sell. And you were like, that's why I want you. I'll never forget that, because I thought sales was about being pushy, but sales is about building relationships and connecting with people. And I love it. And as you, Chris, I was traveling the world and with Marriott and with a company I was with for over 10 years as well. I was used to that lifestyle, and suddenly I own a little restaurant in Nicosia, and it's a small business, and I've got a home office, and I'm limited, and it can be frustrating. So this came out just speaking with a coach and what do I do in the next chapter of my life? And I thought, brilliant. I can connect with these amazing people that I met on the road of life and grab their learnings, share it with other people. So I'm very excited. I'm honored to have you on the first episode of the Business Mentor.
Am I the first?
You are the first. You are. Yes, I'm launching with you, Chris.
Thank you for that, George.
Finish 2 more points. Is there a quote that you live by? That, 1 or 2 quotes that are always there at your mind and they give you energy and inspire you.
Is there a quote I live by? I mean, God, there would be, of course, there's all the cliches of never give up. And I tell you, George, we've got gosh, I can't remember this lady's name. And I don't know if she was in your cohort of graduates or she was the year before you. There was this fabulous young lady graduate who, do you remember, her quote about life was get involved. Was she in your, I can't remember. She was from Northern England, and she used to stand up at every graduate event, and whenever I saw her for years, and oh God, I can't remember her name, I'm so sorry. Do you know what she would say? Get involved. And you see me, Chris, get involved. And I used to make, I mean, because I could give you a million quotes. What did Winston Churchill?
She was in my class, and she said a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
the.
there's always, be optimistic. There's no point in there. There's always, but no, I am George. I don't know if you remember. One of the things Marcus would tell a story. It's maybe not so much a quote, but a wee story. But Marcus, guys, for those who might not know, I don't know how you even describe him. He created Spirit to Serve for Marriott in the UK. He was an external trainer slash motivational slash, I don't know, Marcus, I can't do a well job of describing how he impacted every aspect of the kind of UK culture of Marriott and as an external support. Marcus would tell this story, right? It's not even a quote, but he would talk about, I don't know if you remember this, George. Every morning in Africa, when the sun comes up, a lion wakes up. Do you remember this? A lion wakes up, and the lion knows They have to run super fast so it can catch an antelope, so it can eat, and so it can live. And every morning in Africa, when the sun comes up, an antelope wakes up, and an antelope knows it needs to run super fast so it can outrun the lion so it won't be eaten. The point being that every morning in Africa, when the sun gets up, you just better start running. You just better start running. And I love the thought of that. I run every morning. I run pretty much every morning. And every morning, maybe the sun doesn't come up in Glasgow, but you start to run and just get, you get involved, you're in the world, and you're not on the sidelines. So I know maybe that's a bit fluffy, but get involved in the world, get involved in your community, get involved with your clients, with your employees, get involved in with whatever aspect of your life, with your family. We've now got 42 employees that work in our business, and I love to know about their lives and their families, and make sure they're okay. That they're all well and healthy, and you just get involved, and that's a good mantra, I think, to live by.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think many people, and we do it in stages of our lives, maybe different areas of our lives, we put it in autopilot. And autopilot just slowly pulls you back, and you're growing or you're dying.
I was at a training seminar yesterday for Home Instead. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, it was about culture and about selling, but not selling as in hard selling. It's about just putting yourself across. And in our business of care, unless you are growing, you're going backwards. You've got to keep recruiting every day. Keep looking for clients. You got to keep going, because if you think, gosh, I've hit a nice plateau, we're making good revenue, our clients are happy, our team are happy, I would just love this for 2025. And I tell you, I'd be tempted to think that, but you cannot think that. You cannot. You have to keep recruiting, keep finding ways to bring new clients on, keep progressing with your team and developing. You've got to keep doing it and to grow, because if you're not growing, you're going back. You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're dead right.
I'm going to finish there. I don't know if you have any last thought or a comment. It was absolutely brilliant from my end. I appreciate you. I'm always grateful that we cross paths. And I wish you all the absolute best. If you have any final thoughts.
No, well, George, no, first of all, I didn't know I was the first in the pot. I mean, it's great. I'm going to dine out on this. And by the way, George, as far as my family and friends are concerned, your podcast is like Joe Rogan. Seriously, like I'm going to be telling everybody this is a global podcast. No, first of all, thank you. I really, it was an honour to be on and to be asked. So I really appreciate that. I have followed your career, and I've seen you be brave, and I'm dead proud of you for doing that, and continue to do that, and I wish you the very best with this. So seriously, I think it's a great avenue for you, and it's a great part of pivoting into doing other things, and it's also a great example. I think it's a great. As I said to you earlier about me being 58 and whatever age you are, George, but that you're old to not so much even to reinvent yourself, but to take the road less travelled, and put yourself in situations that can be, exciting, but a bit, can I do this and should I do this? And that would be a message, to talking about joining hospitality, just to do things that other people don't want to do, because out of that, I mean, not a lot of people want to go to Omaha, Nebraska. I got to tell you, and telling my teenage daughters that they're leaving the comfort of Glasgow and they're going to move to mid-America could sound kind of crazy, but it's the road less travelled. But you go there and just amazingly exciting things happen when you do the less obvious thing. So no, listen, this has been great. It's been lovely for me just to kind of to reflect, and it's lovely just kind of to chat. So no, thank you, George. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you too, Chris. I wish you all the best, and it was an absolute pleasure.
Okay, you take care.